Uber to the place for like $10 back. You lost money basically. Yo, what's up guys? So today's video is going to be a little bit different, but this video will be kind of like a business kind of video, and it will be about how I price my work as a creative freelancer. So for photo and video work for myself.
Damn son, where'd you find this?
Medical bags on the whip. Take a nigga bitch go missing. Ooh, bitch I ball like a bitch I flesh with flair. Damn, all they do is stare. Ooh, Lil Pump really don't care. No, fuck that Lil Pump, yeah. Ooh, everybody know more than that.
This is my own input as a photo and video guy, and kind of doing it for like 2 years-ish. So I've learned from my mistakes, and I've kind of worked out how it kind of works in my head logically, how I can justify my prices and how it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. So hopefully the takeaways from this video is that you can kind of like work out a formula for yourself, whether it's taking my formula or maybe you can kind of justify how these costs add up and add to your overall quote to your client. And maybe if you're not a creative yourself, maybe you just kind of want to understand a bit about pricing creative work. Maybe you're thinking of hiring someone and you thought he was ripping you off or something. So maybe this video can kind of help you break it down so you can kind of understand what goes into it, so you can understand whether he's ripping you off or not, or maybe it's justified. But before we get to the formula, I just kind of want to go over my mistakes as when I was starting out. So when I was first starting out, I was just thinking of like what people my age were earning as like an hourly for their full-time salary job. And I'm gonna tell you why that's wrong in a minute, but I was thinking like $20 to $40, right? That's a pretty good hourly rate for full-time workers around my age, recently graduated, whatever. So I did like a few gigs, and usually they were just like an hour, usually, but a few were like 3 hours or 4 hours maybe, and I would just do $30 an hour, right? Something like that. But there's a bunch of money that is justified that you're missing out on, and that's why you can't really compare it to a full-time salary rate, because there's all these things that you're not thinking about, like for example your post-production costs, your post-production rate, your equipment, your commute, your travel expenses, and your pre-production. Maybe you went to the location early and you did some location scouting. So say for example you do like an hour shoot for like $20, and then you Uber to the place for like $10 back. You lost money basically. You spend an hour at home editing the photos as well. You went to the location early a little bit, 30 minutes, so you spent 90 minutes on location, an hour at home editing, maybe like 30 minutes on commute there and back, and $20 on the Uber. So you basically worked for free, or you lost money basically. So you can't really compare it to our salary for a full-time worker. And another reason you can't really compare it to like a full-time salary kind of job is because they're paid for the full 40 hours, regardless of whether they work the 40 hours completely or not, because most people probably don't work the full 40 hours, and they like get benefits on top of that. And yeah, you just kind of have to think of it as kind of like a bundle deal for them. So as a freelancer, if you find a client who wants to work with you long-term, personally I'm willing to cut them a deal if it's long-term, because it's like a consistent stream of money. And as a freelancer, you don't necessarily know when your next paycheck's gonna come in, so that's kind of like working in that bundle deal and like security aspect kind of things that lowers the rate kind of. So, and also as a freelance creative, you might only work on a few projects at a time. Like I said, you don't necessarily know when your next paycheck's gonna come all the time. For some people, it's by choice. Like you want to work on projects that interest you and take a lot of time and effort. So for some people, they only work like 3 projects in a month, right? And if you're working 3 projects a month and you do your $20 hourly rate, and you only do like 3 shoots a month, and each shoot is 1 hour each, you only are getting $60. You can't live off that. So for this part of the video, I'm just gonna be going over the breakdown of my formula and kind of like justifying the pricing for each like factor that goes into the formula, right? So there's this saying, there's this quote in this 4-Hour Work Week book saying Price It High and Justify. I have the book. I haven't read it fully. I haven't gotten to that part, but in Justin Odisho's pricing video, he says that, and I think that's a really good thing that can tie into all this, because a lot of people think like clients, new clients, they think like video work is expensive, like a music video is at least $1,000, and people are like, oh, but you're just using a camera and it's fun and you're just going to these locations to shoot. But there's a lot more that goes into it, and yeah, just hopefully this formula makes sense and can kind of like break it down for you. So the formula is really complicated. I want you to take notes right now. It goes like this. It's rate plus expenses. I know that's really hard, and I can't even memorize it. I got it written down right here. Yeah, it's pretty simple, rate plus your expenses, but we have to break it down, right? So within your rate, you have your pre-production rate, your production rate, your post-production rate, your commuting rate. Maybe there are more rates I don't know about, but those are the most common ones, and those are the ones I think about when pricing a project. So for your pre-production rates, this can be like your location scouting rate, your treatment rate, your planning rate, whatever, your rate for procuring the equipment, the cast, whatever, producing it, all of that can go in the pre-production rate. And then for your production rate, it's basically your rate when you're on set and without any equipment, just your knowledge and your creativity is basically your production rate, and like your demeanor and stuff and all that. And then you have your post-production rate, which is basically your editing rate. So within all of those rates, just work out what you think is fair. So personally, my post-production rate and my production rate is about the same. Pre-production rate is a bit lower, and my commuting rate is pretty low. But you also have to think about like as like the opportunity cost, right? If you're Ubering from location A to location B or driving whatever, and it takes an hour, that's an hour you could have spent picking up a skill that can boost your business or working with a client as well. So you got to think of time as money. So for your expenses, this is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just go over the really common ones. So you might have like travel expenses. So you might have to like rent a car, or maybe you took an airplane to fly to the location, or maybe you took in like an Uber, whatever, or you pay for gas, right? Those are travel expenses and they should be covered. And these expenses are outside of your commuting rate, which is also kind of like a travel expense in a sense for the client. And then you have your equipment expenses. Sometimes you might have to rent equipment for a certain production and it costs money, you know, so, and obviously that comes out of the client's bill. You're not gonna pay out of pocket. But this is also where some people get tripped up and they don't necessarily get their full worth, because your own equipment you should price as well. Even though it's paid for already, maybe you paid for it in the past, your equipment is still like an investment that your clients pay for, and you should be charging over time, like kind of like a fixed rental fee for each production. So personally, I look up the day rates for the rental fee for the equipment, and then I kind of give it like a slight discount on them, but it is still a fixed cost. When some creative freelancers price their work, they give like a strict rate, and within that rate, they can justify a higher rate because they have better equipment, right? But for this formula, we're breaking apart the expenses and the rate. So this is kind of how you like understand these people have higher rates, right? But I think by breaking it down, you can kind of make a more fair price for your client. And like some other expenses you may incur are like maybe like props, or like maybe the location shoot, or maybe you have like a crew, like a fixed price for a crew. Like yeah, all those are expenses. So yeah, I'm just gonna go over in my computer really quickly and just go over some examples and like maybe some tips and tricks. I won't be going over like maybe my exact numbers. I'll give like a rough idea because it varies from location to location, so it won't be that much help to you. I've actually changed my price because right now I'm in Shanghai.